Mr. Shem was starting Psachim Parak Dalad Makim Shanagu, just a shtickle akdama to the parak because we're going to be discussing a lot of different minhagim. We don't always get a chance to discuss all the minhagim that we want, but this is how it goes. The fourth parak begins by discussing the halachas regarding the Isser Malacha of Erev Pesach, which is Yudal Nisan. As we'll see in the Mishnah, whether or not when we work during this time is a matter of a custom. It's not a halacha. After saying that people must follow the customs of their town, the parak discusses several other minhagim that were observed in various communities, most of them unrelated to Pesach. The chiyuv to keep minhagim is learned out of the pasuk Shema b'ni Musa Ravicha al titash teres imecha. Hear, my child, the discipline of your father, and do not forsake the teachings of your mother. That's how the Gemara explains it on Daf Nun Amud Beis. Reb Shri Goin adds that it can also be inferred from the pasuk You shall not move your neighbor's border, which the early ones marked out. Reb Shri Goin's understanding is that this is not only in the literal sense, but also as a warning not to change the customs established by our ancestors. Now, just a little bit of, without getting involved in anything specific, just as more of a general rule, the concept of minhagim, many different minhagim changed, and many different minhagim were forgotten, and many were remembered halfway. There's many minhagim that people do that may or may not have a makar. It's interesting to look into it and see where the various minhagim come from. If they have a reliable source, if they don't have a reliable source, where it can be traced back to, where not. Most people believe that minhagim are based off what their fathers did or their parents did. As we'll see in the mishnayos here, it's more dependent on the makom, meaning that this city or this community was nayah kach v'kach, and the reason why the father or your grandfather was nayah kach v'kach is because he came from that city. Now, if he'd be in a different city, maybe you would have to observe the minhagim of the other city. It's more place-based, makom-based minhag as opposed to family-based minhag. Today, altogether, it's interesting because after many families came from Europe to America, whether before the war, certainly after the war also, many things were forgotten, many things were changed. Mr. Shem, we're going to get to it in more of an oimek at different tkufas, but not at this juncture. We're going to be focusing more on this parak of mishnayos. So Mishnah Aleph, Mokav Shenogu Lasses Malacha B'Arvei Psachim Arich Chatzos Oisen, in a place where the people follow the custom to do malacha on Erev Pesach until Chatzos. One may do malacha before Chatzos. Mokav Shenogu Shaloi Lasos, but in a place where they follow the custom not to do malacha before Chatzos, Ein Oisen, one may not do malacha before Chatzos. Now, what's the svara to say that you do or don't do malacha? So the Isser Malacha that you have on Erev Pesach is similar to the types of Isser Malacha that's going to be also in Chol Hamoed. But the pashtus is that we could say many svaras, but the pashtus is that because a person has to bring a korban Pesach that day, so the Chacham instituted this Isser so that one will not get so involved in his work that he forgets to remove the chametz from his reshus, shech the korban Pesach, and prepare for the mitzvahs of halaylo and mitzvahs for the seder. Some places were noyig that this Isser of this minhag, so to speak, of malacha was to extend this Isser into the morning as well. But the Mishnah is teaching us that this custom was dependent on wherever it was adopted. Now, the pashtus is also that there's a halacha, which is also based on a minhag, a pashtus, that whenever an individual would bring a carbon, even if it was a carbon yachid, there was an Isser Malacha for him. And it's brought down in Megillah's Tainus, and the Rambam talks about in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash, that when a person brings a carbon, even if it was only a carbon eitzim, this week was Tu B'Av, which discusses, the Gemara Tainus discusses the carbon eitzim being brought in Tu B'Av. So even if a person only brought a carbon eitzim, so seemingly it's not like a zachash of a carbon, a person would think that it's not important. There's no Isser Malacha involved, but the Rambam brings La'alacha, that if there were people that were noyig the Isser Malacha on the day they brought a carbon like a yantiv, so zicher on a day where Gans Klal Yisrael is bringing the Korban Pesach, we should be noyig Isser Malacha because of the Korban Pesach. This big Mishnah L'Melech there in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash, which discusses the back and forth of what the Isser Malacha is on Erev Pesach. So one who moves from one place to another follows the minig observed in his new place. The Mishnah discusses the halacha for one who is temporarily in another city on Erev Pesach. If one travels from a place where they do malacha before Chatzos and Erev Pesach to a place where they don't do malacha, or he travels from a place where they don't do malacha to a place where they do malacha, we impose upon him the chumras at a place where he departed, and the chumras at a place at which he went. As a result, in both cases, he may not perform work before Chatzos. In the first case, where he traveled from a place where they perform malacha from a place where they do not perform malacha, he must observe the local custom of not to work, meaning the chumra hamokum sheholach l'sham. In the second case, where he traveled from a place where they do not do malacha to a place where they do malacha, he must observe his hometown custom not to work. The chumra hamokum sheholach misham. A person should not change, should not deviate from the local custom because of the conflict that this might cause between him and the local people. A person is generally bound by the customs of his hometown. Nevertheless, in order to prevent conflict, one should follow the customs of his current location. And Rome do like the Romans. Therefore, the local custom is not to work. He too should refrain from work, because if he were to work there, it might cause conflict. On the other hand, where the local custom is to work, he should observe his hometown custom not to work. This will not cause conflict, because Yishev al Taisa, people won't see that he's not doing anything. Because the Maika Amrit, say he says, oh, he doesn't have to work today. Because there's a lot of unemployed individuals floating around, not just their Pesach. So that's a pshat. I'd want to differentiate between something that I think many people get confused about or are just not sure about. Obviously, there are halachas, that's get paskin and Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, and v'chulu, you go through the halachas, you go through the sugis, you see how to paskin, you see what to do, you see how to be noyeg. Now, there's something that's called a minig, that, like we're talking about over here, it's not a real iser, it's a minig. They were noyeg to do this. Right? Some people are noyeg to wear gartel, some people are not noyeg to wear gartel. There's no chiyuv to wear gartel, exactly like the way certain people wear it. But then there's something which is just the hanhoga taiva. It's not a minig. It's just, you like to be machmer about a certain thing. It's not a minig as in a real minig. It's just a nice thing that you do, or it's a nice thing that you got accustomed to doing. And you call that a hanhoga, but it's not be'etzem, a minig, meaning that, yes, people will say that minig is the same iy'h as Gehenna, but you could do what you need to do. Okay, Mishnah base. Similarly, hamelech perish shvius mimakom shakalu l'makom shaloi kalu, or mimakom shaloi kalu l'makom shakalu chayav levar. So we're going back to a discussion about Shemitah. The previous Mishnah discussed the halacha for one who's in a place where the local minig differs from his minig in his hometown. The following Mishnah discusses a similar situation that arises bin legeya the hilchis biur by shvius at the end of the season. Since the season for each crop ends at different times in different parts of Eretz Yisrael, there are times when produce is permitted to remain in the house in one place and forbidden in another. So, similarly, if one brings crops of shvius from a place where these crops ran out in the fields to the place where they did not yet run out, or if he removed it from a place that did not yet run out of this crop to a place where they did run out, he's mechuyev to do the biur of the shvius. The chiyuv of biur is determined by the availability of produce in the location in which the produce grew. Therefore, where the produce grew in a place in which the species is no longer available in the fields, he must remove the produce from his home by the letter of the law. And where the produce grew in a place in which the species is still available in the fields, but is now in a place where the species is not available in the fields, he must remove it for the sake of complying with the chumrei hamokum sheholach l'sham, where the locals must remove their produce. The locals are doing biur. As we learned in the previous Mishnah, one should follow the customs of his current location in order to prevent conflict between him and the local people. According to the Tana Kama, if several species of shvius vegetables were pickled together in the same barrel, they do not need to be removed from the house until all the species in the barrel are no longer available in the fields, as we mentioned, as we learned in Masechta Shvius. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says that each species is treated independently, Therefore, we say to the owner, go out to the field and bring for yourself a sample of each of the species. Any min that cannot be found in the field must be removed from the mixture and declared hefker, as we learned in Parak Tes in Shvius. Okay. Mishnah Gimel, Makim Shenag Ulimka Behemadaka Levi Kechavim Meichrin. The Mishnah is going to discuss a number of halachas that are only observed in some places. It's also to rent or to lend large livestock to a goy. Since the yid still owns the animal, when the goy will work with the animal on Shabbos, the Jewish owner would be over on L'man Yinuach Shorcho V'chamayrecha. The Shvisas Behema is not going to be able to be Mekayim Shvisas Behema. So the minhag discussed in this Mishnah developed as a result of this issue. So Mokum Shenogulim Kabehema Dakalevi Kechavim Meichrin. In a place where people follow the custom to sell small livestock, such as sheep and goats to goyim, he's allowed to sell them. In a place where they don't follow the custom to sell small animals to goyim, when I may not sell them. In some places, meaning it was usher midrabanan to sell big animals to goyim. In some places, they've been extended to usher even small livestock, because if you're going to sell small ones, you might end up selling big ones. But in every place, when we not sell them large livestock, such as oxen and horses. If selling large livestock to goyim were allowed, one might also rent or lend one to a guy, which would result in them being over on shvisas behemtay. So the Chachamim answered even selling large livestock to goyim. However, they didn't forbid the sale of small livestock since it's not used for work. Even while the oxen are still calves and the horses are still young, and whether they're healthy or maimed, meaning even if they're damaged in a way that makes them unfit for work, although both the shleimen and the shvurim, the young ones, and the broken animals are not fit for work, if people were permitted to sell them, they might also sell full-grown, healthy animals, not realizing that there's a difference between them. Rabbi Yehuda matir b'shvura. Rabbi Yehuda is matir selling in the case of a maimed animal. Since such an animal is never able to work, the guy will shecht it right away. Therefore, no yid will see the formerly Jewish-owned animal in the guy's possession and assume that even a healthy large animal may be sold to guy. Rabbi Yehuda agrees that one may not sell a healthy young large animal, such as a calf, to a guy, because the guy will keep it until it's grown and fit for work, and one who sees it in his rishus might think that even fully grown large animals may be sold to guy. Ben Besera matir besus. Ben Besera permits selling in the case of a horse, because horses are usually used for carrying riders, not for work such as plowing. The Chachamim did not ask selling an animal mainly used to carry riders, because it's not also midaraisa for one's animal to carry a rider on Shabbos, because we know that Chay Noisei Es Atzmai, and the horse is not considered to be carrying. Therefore, there's no concern that you may be over on Laman Yanuach because of the riding on the horse. However, the Tanakama maintains that if selling riding horses were mutter, one might also sell work horses, and that will cause somebody to be over on Laman Yanuach Shorcha V'chamayrecha as well. Mishnah Daled. Makom shenagu lecha tzoli b'leili Pesach oichlin. There's two more minhagim that we're going to be discussing in this Mishnah. The first custom developed as a result of the halacha that the Korban Pesach, which is eaten on the first night of Pesach in Yerushalayim, Bisman Abayis. Now, there were movements over the years to be makriv a Korban Pesach on the Har Abayis in Bisman Hazeh. Every year, the people that even nowadays try to go up there. I think this past Pesach, somebody actually smuggled a goat in under their shirt and got caught. And they're different, there's an organization that gives out different prizes for people who get caught trying to make Korban Pesach over there. If you go there, if you say it's a shechter, I think that's the highest madrega. They give you 50,000 shekels or something like that. But I'll call panim, Malcolm Shanag Lechel Tzli B'Leile Pesach, B'Leile Psachim Oichlin. In a place where people follow the minhag to eat roasted meat at the Seder on Pesach, Oichlin, one may eat it. Malcolm Shanag Shalei in a place where people follow the minhag not to eat roast on Leil Pesach, because it gives the appearance of eating Korban Pesach outside Yerushalayim, and Oichlin, one may not eat it. These places felt that roasted meat on this night, on Leil Pesach, suggests that he's eating Korban Pesach. One who eats meat prepared this way at the Seder appears to be being over on the Isser of eating Kachon Bachutz. In all places, it's also to roast a goat or a lamb in the exact manner that the Korban Pesach was roasted, which is on a spit with its knees and its kishkes on its side, like the Mishnah will learn at the beginning of Perek Zayin, and eat it at the Seder. This certainly gives the appearance of violating the Isser of eating a Korban Pesach outside Yerushalayim. We'll discuss this later on, but I think Bisman Hazeh, that's why many people don't eat the Zroya from the Ka'ara. They won't eat it by the Seder because it's supposed to be roasted. But meat, the Zikr, people won't eat. But I think that there were minhagim that people do eat the roasted Zroya on Pesach. Mokum she'noagu lahadlik esaner b'leil yom kippurim madlikin. Mokum she'noagu shalei lahadlik ein madlikin. There was a minig on Yom Kippur, so we know on Yom Kippur it's aser to achila, shtia, sicha, meshicha, and to wear shoes and tashmish hamita. So today the husband and wife shouldn't be living together. There was a minig that they would keep the light and they would light a lamp in the house on Yom Kippur night. I mean, obviously it was before Yom Kippur, but on Yom Kippur one should light a lamp. Why? So that the presence of a light will discourage the marital relations, which is usher in an illuminated place. In these places, it's not sufficient to light a lamp on Yom Kippur. It's done on every Yom Tov, rather that they would have to light it in the bedroom itself. So mokum shenogu shalei lahadlik, ein madlikin, but in a place where they were not to light, they felt that the absence of light will prevent the relations because one will not see his wife. In these communities, a lamp is not lit anywhere in the house. An exception to this rule is Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos, and a lamp must be lit l'kavet Shabbos. But in all places, one may light a lamp in shuls, and in batim and drashim, and in dark alleys, or any place where husband and wife will not find themselves secluded, as well as for the sick, because it's unlikely that this will lead to tashmish. In these places, in these situations, there's no concern for tashmish at all, so it's going to be a mitzvah to light lamps in honor of Yom Kippur, which is Yom Nishmasa, which everybody lights a candle for themselves. And it's just interesting because on the topic of minhagim, in shuls there's a minig to light neiros whenever we daven, and it's just very interesting that recently I heard a shir. It was going around that there was a person, allegedly a Talmid Chacham, that was giving a shiur about it, and he said that this minig to light candles in shul comes from the Chassidim, because it was dark in the shuls and they wanted to be able to read at night, so they lit it and they left it on even during the day. There's no such thing. There's a medrash beferish saying it comes from the halacha of lighting on Yom Kippur. Comes from here, comes from this Mishnah as we're discussing now. But in the shul befrat, there's a minute to beurim kibdu es Hashem. It's a psik, it's a medrash that we should light candles when we daven because it's a covet. Why do the parents of the chassan and kala march with candles down to the chuppah? What's that all about? It's a covet. It's a covet when you make more light. Mishnah hey. Malcolm Shanag Lasses Malacha B'Tisha B'Avoisa. On Tisha B'Av, it's a tainus which we are misabel on the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Although one may not perform work during the 7-day period of mourning over the death of a relative, it's mutter l'chatchila me'ekar adin to work on Tisha B'Av. The Mishnah begins with the minhag of some places to nevertheless refrain from working. Learning is also on Tisha B'Av. Malcolm Shanag Lasses Malacha B'Tisha B'Av. In a place where the people follow the minhag to do work on Tisha B'Av, one may do malach over there. Malachim Shnagu Shalayla says malach in a place where they follow the minhag not to do malach on Tisha B'Av, says not to be distracted from the avelus over the mikdash. Ein oisin, one may not do work. Work that can be done in a short time and with little effort, such as lighting a candle or tying a knot, may be performed even in these areas, since such work will not distract from the avelus hachurban. Wachal malkam, and in all places, even where the custom is to work, Talmidei Chacham betelim. Talmidei Chachamim should be bottled, meaning they shouldn't go to work on Tisha B'Av in order that they can be focused on the Avelos HaChorban. The Talmidei Chacham are expected to feel the loss of the Beis HaMikdash more keenly than other people. However, an ordinary person should not be a Shabbatul, because he'll look like a Baal Gaiva, as if he's trying to abstain from work in a place where it's custom to work. Because it would sound like that he's trying to make himself into a Talmid Chacham. Now, the word is like this. It's just very interesting that Bechlal, what's this concept that a Talmid Chacham has to be more focused on the Beis Hamikdash. I mean, the Beis Hamikdash, the Churban Beis Hamikdash was a Churban that was for all of Klal Yisrael, but it was the Talmidei Chacham Befrat. without getting into the whole Torah of it, but there's just a quick word from the Chedush Yarim. Shulchan Aruch says, and talking about the halacha of Tikkun Chatzos, the Shulchan Aruch uses a lashon that it's royal l'chol yorei shamayim li'es meitzav v'doigel churban beis hamikdash, and it's proper for anybody who's a yorei shamayim, a person who's a shtukal bal madrega, that he should be saddened and misabel and mourn the loss of the beis hamikdash at night. That's Tikkun Chatzos. So, what should a person do if he's not a Talmid Chacham? He shouldn't be misabel on the beis hamikdash. So Chedush says he should be made to v'derg al churban atzmai. He should be misabel and mourn the loss of the destruction of himself. That he could be a Talmid Chacham and he's not. It's just interesting what the makar for that halacha is. It's not brought down. The Bar Goyla on the side of the Shulchan Aruch brings down the makaris of where all these halachas come from, but over there he doesn't bring it down. But the makar that I saw brought and I heard from my Rebbeim is that in Baba Kama on Daf Nun Tes, there's a story with somebody Allah as a iy'h, and he was wearing a certain type of shoe, and they said, "Oh, who are you to wear this type of shoe?" So he says, "I'm wearing this shoe because I'm being misabel on the Beis Hamikdash." They said, "Who are you to be misabel on the Beis Hamikdash?" So he said, "Oh, you're not right to be misabel on the Beis Hamikdash." So they locked him up, but he was a Talmid Chacham, and he should have or could have stuck up for himself, and he didn't. But he didn't tell them right away. But the point is that there's that a person also has to be neg with the proper balance of anivus as well. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, in such matters, anybody may conduct himself like a Talmid Chacham. One who does not work on Tisha B'Av will not appear like a Bal Gaiva. It's not mechzik yuhara. It doesn't look like Gaiva. Because people who see him not working will assume that there's nothing he needs to do and won't think that he's just sitting around because it's avils of the Churban. The Mishnah is going back to the Mishnah Aleph discussing Erev Pesach. In Yehuda, in Judea, they would perform malacha on Erev Pesach until Chatzos. In the Galilee, they wouldn't perform any malacha at all, even before Chatzos. The Chachamim disagree with the Tana of the first Mishnah, who said that working Erev Pesach before Chatzos is a minig. According to their opinion, the performance of work on Erev Pesach before Chatzos is a matter of halacha, and it's not totally minig. In Yehuda, they held that one may do malacha until Chatzos, and in Galil, they held that work is also midrabana the entire day. I mean, it was a real isra, not a minig. Because it's machlekes if it's a minig or not. So the Pashta says if it's a machlekes it's a minig or not, so then you l'chayra have to be, if it's an isra gomer and it's not totally in minig bichlal, then you have to take a side. V'halaylo, and the night of the 14th, meaning the night of B'dikas Chametz, Beishamay Oisrim, or Beisil Matir, not a Netzach Chama. Concerning the performance of work on the night of the 14th of Nisan, Beishamay say it's Osir, because they look at it as Yantif, which begins at 9. Beisil Matir, not a Netzach Chama, but Beisil are Matir until sunrise of the 14th, because they treat it like a fast day, which begins in the morning. It's a Shaila in the Gemara. That Beisil Psachim as well discusses the Mitzvah Sayem Kekulei situation. Mishnah Vov. Remeir says, also any work necessary for Yom Tov, the one began before the 14th of Nisan on Erev Pesach, Gomer Barba, also he may finish it on the 14th day before Chatzos, even if he's in a place where the custom is not to do Malach on Erev Pesach. However, in such places, he may not begin to work on the 14th, he may not begin to work on the 14th of Nisan, even though the work is necessary for Yom Tov and he can finish it before midday. The Chachamim say, there are three types of craftsmen that may perform the malacha on Erev Pesach until Chatzos because the services they provide are essential for Yom Tov. Tailors, barbers, and launderers. Even shoemakers may also make shoes for one who needs shoes for Yom Tov. It's interesting, if they were going up to Yerushalayim, then they would need shoes till they got up to Yerushalayim. Once they're in the Har HaBayis, they have to take off their shoes. Mishnah Zayin. Moishivin Shevachim L'Tarnagoyim Barba also. The din of Malach and Erev Pesach after Chatzos and Chalamayit is halacha. It's not a minute. Nevertheless, there's a chiluk between Erev Pesach and Chalamayit. On Erev Pesach, only malacha that's considered a tircha is aser. And Chalamayit activities that involve unnecessary or excessive exertion are also aser. The following Mishnah discusses 3 activities that are more readily permitted in Erev Pesach than on the Chol Hamoed. The first, okay, well, let's go through them now. So, my Shivan Shevachon Tanagon Baba Asa. One may place eggs under hens on the 14th of Nisan. Since there's no labor involved in this activity, it's mutter in Erev Pesach even after Chatzos. However, one may not place eggs under hens on Chol Hamoed because this activity involves unnecessary exertion, which is going to be also on Chol Hamoed. Although the egg will not hatch if they're not placed under a hen, they can be eaten instead. But in the case of a hen that was sitting on an egg and then ran away, you may return her to the place, even on Chol Hamoed, despite the tircha that's required to do this, because otherwise the eggs will become ruined. And this is a davar ha'avod, so just like on Chol Hamoed, it's mutter to do a davar ha'avod, so to Erev Pesach would also be mutter to do a davar ha'avod. Similarly, if the hen died while sitting on the eggs, one may set another hen in her place, and since he wouldn't do so, he would lose the eggs also. The second case is Garfin Mitachas Ragle Behem Baba. So one may clear away the dung under the animal's feet on the 14th of Nisan and Erev Pesach after midday and take it out to the garbage. But Moed Misalkin Litzdad. On Chol Hamoed, he may only sweep the dung to the side of the yard. He may not take it out to the dung heap because unnecessary exertion is usher on Chol Hamoed. And the third case is Meilichin Mevin Kelim Beis Uman Avapisha Enim L'Tzarech Hamoed. One may bring utensils to the house of a craftsman to be fixed at a later time and retrieve utensils from the house of a craftsman on Erev Pesach after Chatzos, even though they're not needed for the Yontif. Unnecessary exertion, which does not involve any melacha, is mutter on Erev Pesach. When a Chol Hamoed or an unnecessary exertion is forbidden, one may retrieve only utensils needed for Yontif, such as plates and cups. So that's Mishnah Zayin. I want Mishnah Ches to be its own shiur. Mishnah Ches and Tes we'll go through in a separate shiur. Actually, Mishnah Ches and Tes we'll do in a separate shiur.